our local community in every city that we go to. And we also have people nominated through our surveys, through LinkedIn, and several other ways. So again, we celebrate you all because we feel like if you are a cybersecurity practitioner, you know, we kind of bow down to you guys for keeping us safe and doing your job. But we do have a handful of people that have been nominated that go above and beyond the call of their everyday duty. So we're going to acknowledge them and thank them for their hard work. So let's start off with Rhonda Atkins, who's the IT manager at Unipress. Are you here, Rhonda? Come on up, Rhonda. If I could maybe have, is anyone of my staff in here to help me out? You're welcome. Oh, Melissa, you want to help? Well, no, you just sit there. It'll be fine. Megan's coming. Jessica Daniel is the Director of User Services and Cybersecurity for Lipscomb University. I have Desiree Davis, who is a compliance analyst in Ingram Content Group. Desiree, am I saying that? Desara. Wait, you tell me, how do you say Desario? Okay, sorry about that. I'm the worst with names, so I apologize. Kevin Groom is an AVP at Internal Audit for HCA Healthcare. Kevin Groom, come on up. Congratulations. Jerome James is the IT director at Sprint's Furniture. Jerome. Reed Johnson is the cybersecurity manager at RIRCM. Reed Johnson. Oops, hold on. This just popped out. Congratulations. We have Steve Lawler is the Chief Information Security Officer at Cecilia Health. Steve, congratulations. We have Vanessa Lovett is an Information Security Analyst at Concord. Congratulations. We have Joy Mangrum is the VP of Technology at Diversity Health. Congratulations. Hopefully some of these people are my next year's panelists. I'll be calling you. We have Michael McLean is the IT Systems Manager for Country Music Association. All right, that's very Nashville. We have Jack McMillan, IT Director for First Farmers and Merchants Bank. Watch out, that envelopes. We have Donna Schlosser is the Director of Network Communications from HealthStream, Inc. Congratulations. Timothy Tate, the Director of IT Infrastructure at Lipscomb University. We have Eduard Torres is the CIO at Castle Rock Asset Management. Congratulations. Okay, now we were on, I think I'm good, Megan, thank you. Melissa Page, who is joining our panel today. She's the Director of Information Technology and Security at Cumberland University. Oops, oh, sorry. Thank you, Melissa. Then I have Jennifer Radford. I actually met Jennifer. They were doing a big, what was it called? Women in Cybersecurity Award, and you were one of the awardees.
Yeah, we met at the premiere, but also in Atlanta. So.
Yeah, so anyways, she's doing big things all over the country. Jennifer Raiford is the CEO and Chief Information Security Officer at GlobeSec Advisory. Congratulations, and thank you for coming to Nashville to be here today. Okay, you know I'm going to mess your name up, right? Just help me out. How do I say it? Srikanth Boddireddy. All right. He traveled from Atlanta too. He's a principal engineer and technical leader at Optum Digital. And thank you for coming in from Atlanta today as well. Last but very not least, hopefully you guys were able to grab his book. I have Joe Esposito. He is the Chief Information Security Officer at Wellpath. You all heard his keynote today. He's going to moderate the panel, so let's welcome Joe up to the stage, and let's welcome our panelists. And with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Joe, and just remember, everyone, if you have any questions, we would love you to be interactive. Just raise your hand. This session goes for 1 hour, and for my virtual audience, you guys have been quiet out there. There's a lot of you out there. Please don't hesitate to put your chat and your question in the chat, and we will get you answered. So everyone, let's welcome our panelists.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name's Joe, and I will not be sarcastic in this session. I will try not to be sarcastic in this session. Thank you guys very much for attending today's event. Thank you, FutureCon. Thank you, panel members. I think I talked to the panel members before, and we love questions from the audience, so feel free to get those in. We'd much rather talk about that. But to open us up, I think what I'm going to do is ask the first question and give each member at least 30 seconds to talk about themselves first, or any hobbies they have, and then answer the question right after. So with that, the first question I'll give to Srikanth. As the cybersecurity threat landscape continues to evolve rapidly, how are CISOs recalibrating their risk models, security strategies to keep up?
Yeah, hi, hello. Yeah, in my point of view, nowadays the threats are like evolving as you have. What I can say is like you have already a guardrails in place, kind of a thing. But still, the threats are evolving. So that way, you need to be more reactive and proactive instead of reactive and more proactive way to detect the risk and find out. So what I mean to say, like reactive and proactive, the way the risk are identified, and you need to make sure the stride or the other threat models needs to be implemented, so that way you have more way of handling the risks.
Awesome. We'll let you go next.
Okay, so I think there's the balancing of the reactive and the proactive, and really being able to ensure that we understand that risk isn't static, that it's living, right? So you should have a risk register, and then also making sure that your models are adaptive, so that as things move and as you get disruptions, that you're actually learning, documenting, and improving as you go. So, I think I would say resilience beats prediction. You can't stop every attack, but you can outpace the chaos.
Resilience beats protection is a great tip. Go to you, Melissa.
Yeah, I'll add to that. A few years ago, you could just do annual assessments, and that was fine. You're just checking that compliance box, but you really can't do that anymore. You have to constantly be reviewing and looking. You have to constantly be checking for issues or checking for changes. It's really a live environment that you have to always keep watch on.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's one of those tips I gave earlier is you do have to spend a portion of your day tracking the changes and trends that are coming out in the news. And every security model and framework that I'm aware of, they're getting updated very, very frequently, and it's getting faster and faster to try to keep up with the threats. So as a follow-up question to anyone that would like it, how would you balance the reactive versus the proactive when it comes to threat in your environment?
So as the Olivia Pope of Cyber and AI, I know a little bit about this. So what I have found to be the most effective is when you are really kind of almost practicing on a regular basis, almost like rehearsing. So every time there's a situation, getting people comfortable with how to handle a situation and almost kind of treating it almost like, you know, almost preparing it with crisis kind of tied into it and starting to build that muscle. So I think there's the balancing the reactive and the proactive by rehearsing the crisis aspect while investing in foresight. So that, you know, the tabletop exercises, red teaming, and then what you just said, the horizon scanning. And that's a constant, you know, thing. You know, have you heard the term where people say keep your head on a swivel, kind of? So kind of like that. But that's what I would say, and what I found to be effective is really getting everybody to learn how to practice and prepare and to build that muscle when you're not in a crisis, but them knowing what to do. And that's how you get more to the proactive versus the reactive.
Absolutely. The best way to defend against a threat is to practice multiple times, and even your minor or close calls, treat it like the real thing.
Absolutely.
It really helps. Anyone else to follow up? Or okay. I'll go to the next one. The next question is, with cyber risk now being considered a board-level issue, how do you effectively communicate security priorities and threats to non-technical executives?
Basically, you know, you need to, when you're explaining to your non-technical folks about how the cyber security makes sense for them, right? So you need to prove them like what kind of business you're doing it, what kind of risk you have. So what happens if the cyber threat happens or cyber incident happens to your organization? So what kind of business impact is going to happen, and what are the things? How much time it will take to remediate and bring the business back is a major thing. The non-technical guys look into it. So you need to give a way of explaining the things in more of the business angle than the technical of a cyber incident way after doing the things.
I completely agree. You need to connect risk and revenue together, right? That's the best way to get somebody on the board to see it the way that you see it, if there's money connected to it, right? So if you go to them and you say, hey, if this happens, it's gonna be really bad. And you speak really technical to them, they're not going to understand that at all. But if you say, if somebody does this, then this happens, like very direct, or, we can't make payroll, or we can't, for me, I'm a higher ed, we can't admit students. If I said we can't admit students to our president, he's immediately going to say, okay, Melissa, fix it right now. So you just have to connect it to your revenue.
So I'll give it to you from my perspective. So I was the first BISO at Unisys, which is Business Information Security Officer. But I had been a CISO before. I had done client-facing, and I had also done this across multiple industries, like defense and intelligence, public sector, and I was also leading their security services side. I say all that to say, I had to speak to different audiences at different times. So the first thing I'd say is to know your audience, right? So when you're talking about the board, the jargons, they don't even know what that is. The acronyms, they don't know what they mean, so don't go there. But what I would say is they do want clarity. And then if you can translate the risk into business, the impact, meaning, the dollars, the reputation, resilience, if you can speak in that language and you can translate it to that, they understand that very quickly. And then you're on the same page immediately. And I've also found that when you can do that, you get what you're asking for because they understand the impact. So I would say cybersecurity isn't really a tech issue, but it is a trust issue, and risk is the story that gets you there, right? So I'm thinking if I were to maybe, well, I'm thinking, even if you can tell it in a story, like storytelling, that usually gets over really quickly. I mean, that's effective, so those would be mine.
Yeah, so one thing I've learned with non-technical executives is that you really need to spend time learning their language. And your dream presentation is where you present something and they ask the questions you want them to ask and then make the decision you wanted them to make. And it takes a while to learn your board enough to be able to tune a presentation so that, I call it puppeteering a little bit, but you want them to, because they want to provide input, they want to make decisions. Empowering them to make the decision you want is a really, really cool strategy, but it's also a lot of work to do. So as a follow-up question to that question, to anyone that would like it, what framework or storytelling technique have you has worked best for you when you're presenting with the board or executives?
Threat, impact, response, and resilience, those are the ones that have been able to resonate with me. The other thing that I did in those roles, especially from the BSO perspective, because I had to bridge the gap between security and business and then be able to tell the story. So if it was an incident or anything like that, I'd literally go all the way down to the level of, if it was a repository or whatever it was, and where the code was, whatever the issue was, I'd go all the way down to that detail. That's the detail I would know, and then I'd roll it up from there, and then I'd keep going. That's how I did it. But to your point, by the time I got there, that was the framework that worked for me. But it was the detail as I got to that, meaning detail, the incident, the actions, all of the detail, which they don't want, right? But
Yep.
you need that to really be able to sustain the story.
Yeah, when it comes to the storytelling is like you can give a reference of a previous incident happened for the same industry and how much effort it took for them to restore the services and how much time it takes for them to for the business to come back. So those are like in references of the past incidents, and that makes more easy for them to convince. And within the same industry, that makes more easy to get the feel of that.
Absolutely. So I'm going to move on to the topic that you can't have a conference on in 2025 without, and that is AI. AI is transforming both defense and attack. How are you integrating AI responsibility into your cybersecurity program without introducing new risks, if that's even possible?
I'll start with that. So for us, AI has to be treated like any other asset. We have to inventory it, classify it, and test it for weaknesses and gaps and issues that you don't think about. You got to have an AI policy. I don't know how many of you are in higher ed, but it's a requirement for us nowadays. I don't know about other industries if that policy is a requirement, but you need to have some form of policy around it. Yeah.
So now AI is like you need to use it in both ways. Like you need to add on to make the work more productive, and also you need to use it like it is also more harmful again in a way, like, okay, if you're not put it in a proper way with the proper guardrails in it and proper training to the employees and what kind of data needs to be shared and what kind of data you're not supposed to share with the AI models, right? So those are the things I'm seeing as a new risk. Is like one way it is to detect the risk and the more faster way than the human intervention, and is also like without the proper implementation, it is also again a risk on top of the risk. So that's what it is.
So this is a topic I'm actually really passionate about. I'm a global ambassador for responsible AI for the U.S. And also, from a consulting standpoint within my company, I spend time working with organizations to actually put in the right level of ethics and transparency. So I think to answer the question, I'd say treat AI systems as critical assets, audit the vendors, enforce transparency, and apply AI-specific governance policies. And there's a strategy to that, and the governance piece must be a part of it. But what I would say is, instead of keeping it separate, integrate it into cyber. And if you can do that, you've already got the structure in place, and now, instead of something falling through the cracks, it's just flowing inside of it. So that is how I see it. And then, I think when you look at it from a standpoint of trust in AI must be earned, verified, and continuously monitored. And it is cyber, so, I believe that it bakes into cyber. And you already have those structures in place, so rather than trying to reinvent the wheel, integrate those systems.
I totally agree. Continuous monitoring and that visibility is so key to AI, with it changing so quick and them coming out with new ones every day.
Yep.
My kind of weird answer on this is, from an attack perspective, I feel like the bad guys are using AI faster than the defenders are. And so I want our people that are writing code to use AI, because AI usually doesn't let vulnerabilities in. And I want some of our help desk staff members to automate more and focus more on things that can't be automated. So I strongly encourage it, but it's also like AI does introduce new risks, and you have to do a lot of the things that people said up here to kind of not get that risk to zero, but to make it manageable, depending on your org. So as a follow-up question for anyone that would like it, what's your approach to detecting AI-generated threats like deepfake phishing or autonomous malware?
So, okay. I'd say for the deepfake phishing and the autonomous malware, demand detection is rooted in behavioral analysis and not just the signature. That's how I would look at it. And I think you brought up a really good point in terms of the organizations, and this is something that I preach with each organization that I work with, and I'm actually involved with military-grade technology around this, but the concept that we can't think that it's a choice that we would leverage AI, it is actually imperative, because you just mentioned it. The threat actors are using it at scale, and so if we're not there, you can imagine how far behind we are, right, in terms of if we're not even looking at it from that standpoint. So there's a shift that needs to occur in the organizations from a defense standpoint, because that is what they're dealing with from an attack standpoint. So I thought you had a great point there.
Yeah, and I haven't had much experience with AI-detected attacks, but I have had experience with, I call it deepfake LinkedIn pages, where people are creating fake recruiter pages and then collecting people's PII. And those are very stressful situations to deal with, and the problem is they're really cheap to do. So I don't have an answer for you, but I know the problem. Anyone else? Okay.
Yeah, I feel for that, the deep fake phishing approach is like more training for the employees makes sense, like, to detect based on what kind of movement it is, like what kind of an activity is happening, or the voice, or what pattern changes. Those kind of trainings makes more better way to analyze a deep fake. So whether it's calling by the same person or the different person, based on the if it's a real FaceTime, may be a little different from the automatic AI generated FaceTime. Maybe that kind of training programs makes more sense for the call centers, or for the CFOs, or the frauds, or whatever happened in the past. Those kind of things can be avoided based on that.
Essentially, AI is both. It's a sword and a shield, really. So, bias checks, and then human oversight as well. That's key. And making sure that there's nothing that has been put in place where there is no human oversight. That is really key.
So I do have fantastic news. We got a question from a virtual person. The question is, what would you suggest be on the cyber team? What departments? And I'll take a quick first shot at it. I think cybersecurity, to do it well, you have to be everywhere, which means you have to be integrated in all of these different departments. And you need to be friends with certain individuals, like the chief legal officer and the chief HR officer and people like that. I do think who's on the cyber team or involved in the decision is a culture by culture decision, but it's definitely something that needs to be strategic, and I'll let someone else chime in.
I agree. Cyber is everyone's responsibility. Everybody in your company needs to have some kind of, stake in it. They need to understand that it's part of their world as well. Especially on your cyber team, you need to have kind of different areas, right? So like networking, you think it's connections and stuff like that, but you really need to have somebody that's in the network that's watching the security of it. You need a network security person on your team. You need a compliance person on your cyber team. There's so many areas of cyber that needs to be covered now, and those teams are just going to have to keep growing. I know that's going to cost more money for everybody, but to stay, safe and secure, you're going to have to grow that team.
I would say, so you've got the traditional cyber, everything that you guys all just mentioned, I think is spot on. The pieces that I would say should be considered is, as I mentioned before, that business security officer should be integrated into the business. And I also think if there is not someone that's focused on resilience, it can be a business resilience officer, but something like that, those are the pieces on top of what you already have mentioned, and basically the traditional roles or those teams. But if you've got someone that can do that, because that's the person that can connect all the dots, be that bridge, and can move across the enterprise. So that's going to bring in the legal, that's going to bring in all of those different pieces. And if nothing else, if you don't have the resources, get plugged into the governance aspects of it, because there is someone that represents all of those areas, or there should be, and that way you can get the things that you need done, and you can bring that transparency to it, and that can help to make the team effective. So I think it's the business and the resilience piece that probably is where things are leading, and then trust, right? So those are things that you don't talk about, but I think those are the things you do need embedded in your team.
Yeah, you need someone accountable for all of that. So just if you're in the room and you have a question, if you just raise your hand long enough, we'll get you a mic and you'll be able to ask. My next question is another AI question. How do you assess and manage the security risks of AI systems developed by your organizations or your vendors?
I kind of touched on it, in terms of the AI systems, the assets, the vendors, the audits, and the governance policies.
Absolutely.
Same for me. I covered it when we talked about, treat it like any other asset. Treat it like any other asset. Make sure it's secure. Check for the gaps.
I think if it is a third-party vendor, it's bringing the product, so it needs to be assessed the same way as the governance, whatever the GRC policy we follow with, the same thing. If it is internal product, then its internal policies, security policies needs to be applied along with that.
Yeah, and just as a follow-up from my side, I want to throw out the term responsible AI. There is responsible use of it. You don't want to use it in certain things like hiring and things like that. So partnering with your legal team to make sure you get those rules ironed out is usually a pretty big win. So I'm going to do this next question as a show of hands in the room. How many people have an AI policy today? And how many people think that policy is being followed? We got a few of them. Okay. Yeah, it's hard to communicate a really technical policy like that. Any other? Okay, I think we're good. All right, so the next question, how are you evolving global cybersecurity regulations like DORA, NIS2, SEC, some of the breach disclosure rules? How are they impacting your approach to compliance and incident response?
I can start with that. So the regulations are and I have different regulations because I'm in higher ed than a lot of the different businesses do. So we're actually really strict. If you're in financial, then you have these same regulations, maybe a little bit more. But we have a lot of compliance with higher ed. But one thing that we've noticed is for these specific guidelines that were mentioned is they're pushing us to respond and report the breaches faster. So for us to do that, we also have to respond and react to the breaches faster. So everything is moving at a faster pace. You don't have that timeline to, okay, let me see what happened, let me figure it out. Okay, this happened, this happened, this happened. Now I can report. You don't have, a long period of time to get that information out there. You have to, it's kind of like a rapid fire, and it's causing a lot of stress in the industry. But also, you need to be prepared to respond to that rather quickly. That's where your incident response plan comes into play the most. You can't have a breach and then you're going back to trying to figure out what to do. You already need to know what to do because of those regulations and guidelines. You already have to have a plan in place. Your communication team needs to know exactly what they need to say and how to put it out there. Before they're told to do it. They already need to have that in mind. So if you've not talked to your communications department and figured out, okay, if we get breached today, what are you going to say? What's going to get out there? If they don't know, you're already a step behind and you're going to have a really hard time. I'm not going to say if it happens, when it happens.
So I think I do have a little bit that I can speak on this because I've been helping to write recommendations to the White House and also some global things around this. And one of the things that I've found that if the shift in the mindset, if the leaders use compliance as a competitive advantage and not a burden, I think that's one. I think the other piece is to consider it, the compliance is really the floor. It's not the ceiling. So reputation is built when you go beyond the checkbox. So sometimes we wait till, and you touched on this, you wait until they tell you that you have to do it before you do it. And I think that's the wrong way to do it. I think you should be creating those sound, robust security programs that we talked about, that's incorporating cyber. You should be testing, monitoring, all of those things. And I think from that standpoint, the regulatory piece, it may come later, but it's coming, right? So then if you're already doing it, it just makes it easier, but it also gives you that advantage when you say, yeah, I'm already compliant with that, I'm doing that, So I think there's two parts to that, but I think it's the mindset the way that I look at it is with the mindset shift.
Yeah, I jumped for joy like a little schoolgirl when the SEC came out with the 72 hours. I've had multiple contracts and customers request different timeframes in different language. So 24 hours if suspected or confirmed, 72, a week, a month. And it was really nice to have a standard come out and kind of set that expectation of this is what the right thing to do is. Because I do think some companies had the wrong answer. Waiting 2 months for breach notification, I think, isn't irresponsible. Hopefully that never bites me in the butt. But having a gold standard like that really does, it made my job a lot easier because I was able to convince people we're going to follow best practice. This is a standard by the SEC, and this is what we're going to do in the event of an incident, and almost all of them have accepted it. So that's how my breach response playbook changed as a result of those rules, but has any of your playbooks have changed since some of those guidelines came out?
Yes, change it to support the standards, the regulations to meet your regulations. You need to change the current playbooks to support that, and otherwise there will be more of business implications or legal implications and a lot of reputation implications on top of it. Right? It's not if you're not reporting everything on time, that makes to change the way of reporting the incident and the way of looking the issue.
I would just add that you should be on a regular basis, at least annually anyway, you should be making the changes according to anything that has come up that's new, including the regulations. So I think that if you're doing that, then as these new things come out, you will already have a process to bake those in and they won't get missed. But I think I just wanted to kind of add that because I think that's And I think that's important to everything. Everything you just said, I just thought about it. I'm like, if people are already doing the regular reviews, and as the new things come out, and you're baking that in, like we talked about, you're really just adding those new things into your program, right? So as you're doing that, make sure you add that into your incident response plans as well, and your crisis management plan.
Yeah, I think I like saying that it's a playbook because it should be changing often.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, you're like the Titans. So, sorry, I can't help myself. So as organizations continue embracing hybrid work and multi-cloud environments, how are you managing identity, access, and data protection at scale?
Yeah, implementing the zero trust model, like, and authentication and authorization, and zero trust policies like least privilege access and IGA, and these are the things which will make the multi-cloud or on-prem. These things will be best fit for in order to. It will avoid all these, 80% of the incidents happens because of this basic identity protocols are not in place, or the privilege access are misplaced, or something like that. So
Do you find it's easy to fix that?
it's not that easy.
Okay.
You need to convince everybody to get into that same boat, to the same page, to what are the advantages and what are the advantages to implement those solutions on it, the IAM solution.
My take on it is you can't just assume that cloud is safe, right? So I have a lot of people, they'll come to me and they're like, well, we're going to get this application. And I'm like, okay, well, let me learn about it. What is it? And they're like, well, it's on the cloud. I'm like, okay. And they just assume that it's safe. They're like, it's in the cloud, it's fine. I'm like, well, is that following our guidelines? Because it still has to, right? So they've already purchased this software. They've already moved on to it. And so then I have to go back and try to figure out, how are we keeping this secure? And I don't know if other companies have this, but in higher ed, and when they buy their cloud softwares, it's like that department kind of owns it. So then that department handles the permissions of it. That department, most of the time, isn't paying attention to security or least privilege or any of that. They're just, putting it out there for everybody. And so you kind of have to follow up, and that goes on to, security is everybody's responsibility. So you have to follow up with them and be like, okay, are we following these guidelines? Are we following these guidelines? Because at the end of the day, if you have a cloud software that somebody else is running, even though your IT department is not running it, and it's not following your guidelines, you're not in compliance anymore because you're under one big umbrella when it comes to compliance. So you kind of have to, you can't just trust that because it's on the cloud, it's safe. You have to treat it just like you do any of your on-prem security. You have to keep up with the user's access. You have to keep up with the security of it.
Do you find that some of your non-technical users that want to do these cloud systems react well when you try to implement that?
Depends on the user. Honestly, they do, because I really am pretty good at talking to my users in like a real life scenario. At the end of the day, everybody does want to do what's best for the company, and they do want to keep stuff safe. They might not know the right practices and the way to go about it, but if you can sit down with them and just kind of talk to them and explain it to them of, hey, you really got to give it real world examples. Sometimes you got to say, okay, that's really great, but when, this person leaves, you're not on that list of that termination list, right? You might know this person left because they're your employee, right? But your mind is not thinking, oh, I need to remove their access. But from an IT standpoint, we have a whole process and procedures. So let's get that for you. Let's make sure you're following that. Let's make sure you're making sure that you're removing those people out as they leave. So I think as long as you talk to them and you explain the situation in a way that they can understand it, they handle it pretty well.
I think zero trust is no longer an option. I think if you look at it like, basically it's the seatbelt for digital transformation. Identity is the new perimeter. And I think if you look at it from a standpoint that cloud is actually, it's the backbone of innovation, right? So, because think about it, that's where it's going, and I mean, we don't have to look to the future, we can just look and see what has happened over the last few years. So I would say secure it like it's oxygen, because that's how critical it is.
100%, that's where the data's at, right, is in the cloud. From my perspective in the hybrid work situation part of the question, I think you have to adjust your tool stack a little bit when you send everyone home. You need some ability to do some geolocation, and you need some ability to force people to always on so that you can patch them. And when they're always on, you can actually find out what cloud systems are using and get that visibility, which I kind of covered earlier today. And doing that is kind of, to me, a critical part of switching to that hybrid work model. And covering multi-cloud environments is hard. It's not going to get easier. It's just something that you're going to have to adapt to in every security program. Hopefully you can reduce the cat and mouse and kind of get ahead of it with your procurement team so that you're injected on day one and able to secure it throughout the life of that tool. So as a follow-up question, does anyone have any opinions on, I think you covered a little bit, on zero trust at all?
No, go ahead.
No, you always say what I'm going to say anyway, so go ahead.
I was just going to say zero trust is hard. It's hard, right? So you have all these things that you need to do to keep your stuff safe, but then you have users that's, inconvenienced by these things. They're very upset over it. They have to click an extra button. But so you have to find a way to implement zero trust, implement your changes, and affect the user as least as possible, which makes it very hard, but you still have to figure out a way to do it. The way that I typically approach it is I'll sit down, I'll talk to my team, and I'll say, okay, how is this going to affect the user? Okay, can we adjust this so we still get the same results, but minimum effect to the user? And that typically goes over well. I really don't get a lot of pushback from our users as far as, getting new regulations. And of course, they email and they're like, well, this is inconvenient. But they understand it once you sit down and you talk to them. And when you say, well, we could have done it this way, but we decided not to do it because it would affect your workday a lot. So you really got to try to focus on what's going to affect your users the most. And try to find a way to avoid that in order for it to be successful and continue your business. Because you have to still be able to do your business processes with all these security things in place. So you have to figure out a way to do both, and they can coexist. It's just really hard.
So I'm going to chime in on that, and I'll say that I touched on it earlier, but zero trust is not an option anymore. But I feel so passionate about this. I just took the role with ENIGMA protocol because it's bringing zero trust to the network layer, and we are bringing that to the crypto space and from a privacy standpoint. So, when you think about zero trust at the network layer and being able to make that invisible, to me, that's where it's going, and I felt so passionate about that I joined the movement. So that's my take on zero trust, is that it's not going away, and I think we need to get really, really good at it, and we need to do that as a nation.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I'm not the biggest fan of the zero trust kind of buzzword, because I think it's when you add security, you lose usability and friendliness, and the second you do that, users will try to bypass it. And so that's the last thing I want, is to ever encourage my users to bypass any security I put in.
But if you don't know, if from a zero trust standpoint, if you are not recognized, you can't get into the network. That's where I'm going.
Mm-hmm. Next question, what lessons have you learned from recent incidents, and how have you reshaped your incident response planning and cyber resilient efforts?
Well, I'll start. As I said, Olivia Popa Cyber, I get the opportunity to see things and help companies get through situations in the middle of the crisis, right? And one of the things that I have been very clear on, and I'll always say, I would much rather you call me on the proactive side. It's a more comfortable situation for everybody involved versus when we're in the middle of it. But there's a couple things that I think are key, but I've already kind of touched on them. One is making sure that as things are moving, your risk and everything is incorporated, you're testing, you're monitoring, and as things change, you make the point to go back and put that into your incident response plan and put that into your crisis management plan. The other thing is the transparency is key. We all get breached, we all, have, incidents. It's how you handle it and how transparent you are with your customers and with your public, and including your associates. That matters too, because it affects them as well. So those are some of the things that, that I see that helps. And then the other thing is, like I said, the preparation, the resilience aspect of it is really what matters. And you don't want to be going, what's our crisis management plan? You don't want to be there. And it's hard to create something when now you've got me in and now we're working very closely. We're going through codes and lines of code, and I'm reporting to the board every hour, and, I've got external counsel and FBI, so that's not the way you want to do it. I mean, we can do it that way, but, and we'll get through it safely, but there's always a better way, and that's why you hear me saying, and I get on stages all over the world saying this, it's better to be proactive and bake it into your process.
Anyone else?
I'll add to that. You basically covered everything right there. But I will just say, if you have never been involved in a breach before, once you do, your mindset completely changes. It's a completely different experience. So if the only thing you take away from today is go ahead and flip your mindset as if you've already been in a breach, that way you know to get your plan in place. Do the tabletops. I know it sounds a little weird. Like when people are talking about doing the tabletops, you're like, oh, that's not really going to help. It helps. I promise it really does help. And it's a terrible way for you to learn that incident response plan is really important, or doing those simulations is really important. You don't want to learn by being in a breach and you're steps behind. You want to do that now. So if you've not been in one, just pretend you have been. That way you can go ahead and move past that, because it is a learning experience your first time.
I feel like that incident response planning is similar to be like a disaster recovery planning, whatever you standardly do that, but generally people don't do this incident response planning use cases because they think, as she mentioned, right, you feel like the incident happened. It's not like once it happens in the future, then you will do the exercise, right? No, not like that. So it's like you need to prepare for it. Preparedness is the main important thing.
Yeah, and just to add on, part of the reason why you practice is so it becomes second nature, and when there is an incident, you follow it. And so I think it's very important that your incident response plan also be flexible and adaptable. I've never had an incident that's the same, and you kind of need a plan that will allow you to cover all those scenarios, because the last thing you don't want to do is say, we haven't thought about that, and we're completely out of left field. Doesn't make you look very good. I do have a question, because when I hear cyber resilience, I think of the ransomware angle, like encrypting and breaking your network. What's your cyber resilience strategy for just plain old data theft? Sorry, I'm going off script. So. I stumped him.
No.
I mean, you need to have a backup plan so that one of the scenarios is like ransomware or anything, right? You need to have a backup of the data if you're on cloud, and you need to have a backup plan of your data on-prem somewhere in your secure storage. So that way, whenever that kind of incident happens, you can recover fastly compared to the impacted services, right? Impacted instances. Okay.
So on my soapbox, I talk about identity. The other soapbox that I'm on around the globe is data and the management of it. And I say this because of AI and everything the way that it is today, the exposure to any sort of data theft is going to be magnified, and it's going to happen quickly if you do not have your arms around the data, you haven't categorized it, and you don't have the proper policies in place. So in the past, that was something hard to do, but now we do have the technology that can help you get there very quickly. So that is one of the things that I do talk about from a proactive standpoint, is really getting in there and really getting your arms around the data management and finding a tool that can help you get there. So that's the main piece. The other piece is I would treat any sort of data theft or leakage or anything, it should already be baked into that plan, and you should have a scenario that touches on your tabletop, that's got that. So to me, it's not something different. It's something that should be already kind of baked in. But I'm just saying, be honest, lift up the hood inside of your organization, and if you really don't have your arms around it, and you really don't know where your sensitive data is, and you really don't know where it's all going, then be honest and get proactive and go in there and take the time to do that, because it can get exposed, and it can get exposed in a very uncomfortable way.
I won't say too much about what our plan is. Like let's say somebody gets into your system, right? They got your data, but you've recovered and you're fine, but they still have your data, right? I'm not going to say too much about what we would do, but I will say if you are not friends and close with your legal counsel and your insurance company, you need to be. Those are your two important contacts. You should have direct connection to them. Legal counsel and security team, or legal counsel and insurance policy. That is very important. If you've recovered, you're back live, you're good, business is operating, but your data's still out there. You got to figure out that piece, and it's a completely separate piece of getting back live and functioning.
Yeah, I totally agree. And kind of the reason I asked that question is there's a growing trend now where it's not just ransomware, it's that double extortion. And so if your plan doesn't have that practice and planned out with your legal team, you need to be doing that soon. So I think we all agree the power of having tabletop exercises. But what's your approach to tabletop exercises? Do you have any tips for us in that area?
Well, I treat it almost like military training, or if you think about, or maybe even elite athletes, maybe that's how I kind of treat it. So that's with intense simulations, technology. I bring teams with me that really will put you through the paces. But I do that because I just got the years of experience to know I'd rather be the one making the organization uncomfortable than someone else, because we're doing it in a proactive way.
Awesome.
I would just add, do it. Do it. It's inconvenient. It's hard to get the right people in the room to do it with you. You need to make sure that you have, buy-in from everyone that's going to be involved, right? So for me to get the communications department in to come talk about a cybersecurity attack, it's difficult, right? But it's important that you do those so that everyone that's involved, everyone that needs to have a play and a stake in that process, they need to know their role.
Yeah, and I would just add to that you also need to change up the content, because doing a tabletop exercise the same way over and over again is not as helpful. Yeah. The cybersecurity talent shortage is definitely a thing. I've seen it all over. How are you attracting, retaining, and upskilling talent while also addressing the whole burnout and team fatigue issues?
I think attracting talent means purpose, not perks. I think retaining talent means culture, not compensation. And upskilling is continuous. And I think that finding attractive ways to offer the ability to level up, to me, is key. So in my career, I started right out of college, and I was in the executive layer at Siemens, and I was always clear that I wanted to learn as much as I could. I was like a sponge. And so if they said, hey, do you want to go over here? I was there. I was ready to do it. So that led to me being able to do what I do across industries and move around the world, and to be effective at every layer. So I think finding ways to make it attractive for people to never feel like they are pigeonholed, or that the ability to upskill while, I mean, at this point, that to me should be an imperative because technology and innovation is moving so fast that you cannot, did it just go up? It's moving so fast that you're not able to.
Is that me?
I don't know. Am I
I'll
going
stop
in or
moving.
out? Anyway, so I think at the end of the day, I would say that the upskilling piece is really key because that allows you the ability to move and learn and grow. And to me, that was attractive and that led me to, you know, where I am today. So I think that's an attractive thing for talent.
You hit on a lot of it for me. My staff is in here, so guys, cover your ears. Don't. You know, it's hard sometimes to give compensation, like, because you have these rules and you have a budget, and it's not your choice all the time, right? But I think one of the key things is compassion and growth, which you touched on a lot of. But you really need to have that compassion for your employee. You know, IT is stressful. It's cybersecurity. It's all stressful. Everything with technology is stressful, right? And sometimes you don't get that great scale of pay that you want. So, but if you can balance that with, you know, giving them the opportunity to work from home for a day or go spend time with their family without, you know, having to worry about what's going on at work. So I really do, again, cover your ears, team. I really do try to prioritize making sure that my team feels comfortable to come talk to me if they need family time or they need to miss for a little bit to go, you know, take care of their things that's going on in life. And I always tell them, you know, as long as the work is done, I'm fine with it. If you need to work from home, obviously you can't work from home every day. We need you in the office. But if you have something going on, like sometimes they'll tell me that they got to take their dog to the groomer. I don't care. As long as your work's done, take your dog to the groomer. That's fine. So I think that that's a really important thing is having that compassion for your employees and giving them that opportunity for growth. A lot of the times in higher ed, you wear a lot of hats. So we are grateful for that because we do have that opportunity to grow our team in different departments. Typically when they come in as help desk, they're able to grow into a different level, which is really nice. So our higher ed environment doesn't provide that room for growth.
Kudos to you for that. I think that is, so whoever the team is, I don't know who you are, but you got a good one there. So that's important. One last thing I'll add to that is, as I went through my journey, and I work for a lot of big companies, at the end of the day, there's a couple things. Regardless of the cyber, the test, and all of that, it was the connection, the human connection. And I got a chance to work with some really good leaders that did it through humanity. And so I totally agree with what you said. And it changed how I viewed the world, having that experience and seeing it from that aspect. So I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, I want to add, like, for upskilling the talent, you basically encourage them to, you know, learn more of the latest tools and the technologies, just like the AI, whatever currently is a trending, and you get opportunity for your team to learn more about that. So it's like upskilling the talent along with the existing skill set, and it makes more creative and more passionate for the employees to work in that zone. And when it comes to the burnout and the team fatigue, is pretty realistically, sometimes you feel it, but it's you know, the major thing we can do is like shift the rotation kind of a thing. Like, okay, you're working for so and so period of time for something else, but you want to shift into something else. And, you know, like, for example, like on-call rotation kind of a thing is pretty much the basic thing where people get more fatigue, and, you know, like those things can be, you know, change your roster into, you know, support the employee wherever it's possible, and that makes more comfortable for the employees to work.
Yeah, and to add on it from my side, I think you have to really find out the motivations of your employees. If you have someone that's in a compliance role and they want to actually do penetration testing, going out of your way to create opportunities for them to manage the pen test projects or to get involved, really get awareness, a lot of times will keep them around from a retention perspective because they're seeing the opportunity to get close to what they want to do, even if they know your hands are tied. There's no role for penetration tester type of deal. I also think that most people that I've met that leave cyber jobs, the supervisor's a big part of it. And the people that stay, the supervisor's a big part of it. And so being the supervisor that you would want to work for, I think is kind of critical to keeping your key people. And finally, to address the burnout and team fatigue, I like to kind of set expectations that there's going to be times of burnout, right? When there's a breach, we have to run 1,000,000 miles per hour, but setting expectations that there's a light at the end of the tunnel and that you can flex, and here's the things that we can do later to kind of make it right, I think are huge. And also, everyone's a snowflake in cybersecurity, figuring out their personalities and what they like to do. So like, for example, Nashville people like music, right? And I'm the only one on my team not from here. So our holiday party is literally them playing YouTube videos. And they love it, right? It allows them to create that culture and bonding and share part of their passion with the team. And so doing little things like that help your burnout when you're going 100 miles per hour for security incident over a weekend, so.
I just want to add one thing about the burnout piece. So the first time I was a CISO, it was for the world's largest prepaid processor, and I got burned out. And after that, I made sure that I was intentional, and this is just personal. I made sure I was intentional about making sure that I found the balance, and I always made sure. I literally didn't even take a vacation. That's how hard I did. There was times I didn't sleep, so I had to be intentional about making sure that I would never do that again. So get a routine, get up earlier just so that you can find that balance and, whatever that routine might be. I'm saying that because these are things that became very, ways that were very successful for me going forward so that the burnout didn't occur again. And also kind of always calibrating and leveraging.
Wasn't me this time.
Calibrating and kind of making sure that is it me or is it going out? Is it going out? Okay, all right. Then I'm going to stop talking then.
So strong security culture is something that we all talk about, but some of us can only dream about. So what does strong security culture look like in your world? What are some symptoms or signs?
So for me, the way that I do it and how I've been able to be successful is I bake it into what people are doing every day, and I make sure that they understand what their role is and how that impacts the company. So whatever that piece is, that's how I view it. So it's me. I feel like I've said it a few times, but it's baking it in and making it a way of life. That's the culture, right? So that's how I see it.
I think that open communication with your users is really important, and making sure that they understand the importance of security. And also, don't just check the boxes for your compliance. For your security needs, don't check the boxes. Go above. That way, you're doing more, and it's more encompassing, right? When you check the boxes, that's the bare minimum. You don't need to do that. You need to go a little bit more. So anytime you're looking at what you have to do, think, okay, what's the next step to that? That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, look into that, how your work, whatever the work you're doing today makes impacting the lives of the people or whatever the end goal of your product is. That is the importance for the security as a culture for you.
Totally agree with all of those thoughts. So looking ahead 3 to 5 years, what emerging threats or paradigm shifts do you think will reshape cybersecurity, and how should leaders prepare?
I think it's pretty much a common word. AI is the one which is coming up with more of the kind of emerging threat feel.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that the attack surface is growing faster, and the defense is, it's got to keep up, right? So it's hard. I think that automation and visibility are the most important key things that you could be doing. You need visibility. You need to see what's going on your network, out in the world, what your users are doing. You kind of need to know that. My plan for that is really other than the visibility, is continue to talk about it, continue to look at news articles, continue to speak what my users see and what they're seeing, continue to talk to my team. I think knowledge is one of the most important things that we can do to keep up with the changing environment, because it is changing daily. So if you're not looking, I think somebody said it earlier, if you're not looking at the news every single day, you're not doing it right. You have got to keeping up with what's going on out there in the world in order to stay, in tune.
Yeah, and I would kind of add on to that this AI thing is not going away, and CISOs are going to have to become experts on it. Cybersecurity engineers and analysts are going to have to be experts on it. So we're almost at the point now where don't wait to go learn that thing. Find a way to get educated on it. And the other thing the trend I'm kind of seeing from a geo perspective is with all the stuff that's going in the world, countries are seeing the value of having data centers here and people here, and some of those lines being blurred. And so it's something as a security professional, we can't just blind out the rest of the world. There's other things that are going on out there that affect us. One of my favorite charts is showing that ransomware decreased after the Ukraine war started, right? The hackers were busy. So it's one of those things that you kind of have to keep an eye on the landscape, and it's just something, if you're in security and you're not willing to learn, I think you might be in the wrong field. I'm going to ask this question just because it's hard. Is there anything other than AI that you think is going to hit us in 5 years?
Well, I'll say this. I think that there is a movement from a digital transformation on the crypto blockchain side. I think that is something that I see that as something that's coming, and that it's not going to go away, and you'll see more of it. I do believe that. The other piece is, you touched on this, which is the data centers, right? So you're talking about AI ready, quantum ready data centers. I spent a lot of time working on subsea cabling and all of that. So that one I think is you'll see a lot more of that, the need for that, and that's going to be a big push. The next wave of new data centers that will be required globally, and then you've got all of the energy that it takes up because of AI, right?
Along with, I think, the current existing ransomware attacks may be more and more, and that is another one, I feel. And the other one is more on the financial side of it. So that makes us to emerge towards to adapt to those techniques to reduce the risk or attacks on these kind of platforms.
Yeah, my last thought is I think laws are also going to be changing. There's a lot of catch-up in the EU and privacy that when one country does it, it does have a flow effect throughout the world. So keeping an eye on that is definitely something worth your time. So I would love questions from the audience or remote if anyone has any. Anyone have any questions that would be helpful? Yes, thank you. We'll get you a mic.
Hello. Hey, what's up, y'all? So, what I find, as far as the whole cybersecurity realm, is it seems very overwhelming, just the amount of fields that you have to learn and the amount of different environments that you're working in. And it's not even just like you're working with technology. You have your whole legality and policies and, users and everything. It's a lot to manage and a lot to learn. And it seems like for one person or even one team, it could be too much to manage. So I'm just wondering how you guys go about trying to balance that or simplify that. Is it just like delegation and documentation, or is there more that y'all tap into for that?
I won't answer because he's one of mine, and he gets to hear me talk all the time. So I'll let somebody else take that one.
So I think to help make it make sense, what I've found is going into the organization, there's a couple things that I do. So one, there's the policy. Policy helps, kind of set the tone, to say what it is that the organization is or is not going to do. The other part is the controls. The controls really kind of give you that ability to say, this is what's required for this to be effective or to meet the requirements. So that control kind of is, I won't say playbook, but it kind of tells you what needs to be done. Then I think you then break that out and you assign different people to be responsible for those controls, right? So that way everyone's not responsible for everything, and that's what I kind of mentioned before. It's everybody understanding their part. So if you're backups or if you know, whatever that, if you're database, then let's talk about all the things that are required on your end. If you're network, let's talk about all the requirements on that, right? So I tend to break it up that way. And then by testing and monitoring internally, that is, again, building that muscle, and that helps to bring that clarity to the organization or to the teams so that they know what their part is, right? So they're not trying to boil the ocean. So that's a part of how I do it. The other part is the testing, the monitoring, the quick mitigation. But then there's also the reporting and bringing that transparency across the board so that, and bringing that accountability. So that helps. And so all of that's going to make it clear as you move along in terms of what you need to see, what you need to do. And then the last piece is, I think that the risk register is another way. So those things that pop up, if you just speak it, make sure you got a funnel to where that goes to. So even if you don't have the answer, you should lean into your governance mechanism, and you should have all the right people in place, and then that way you should be able to, address it and, either resolve it or have it on the radar, if that makes sense. So those are the things that, kind of break it up, and by putting those in place and having that plan, it kind of makes it, I'm not sure if I've helped or not, but to me, that helps to make that whole, pull all of that together. And then I could talk about this for days. I've got a whole methodology around this, but this is what you talked about is very key, but this is how I do it, so that it's not so big and so, cumbersome, but it can be done where, and then training and awareness, like bringing people into the fold and helping them understand and getting very involved in what it is they're doing in the line that it takes. That's my response to your question.
Yeah, but part of the reason I like cybersecurity is that you're never bored. There's an overwhelming amount. And part of the cyber leader or whoever's on your team is to develop a strategy for your team not to drown, right? And a lot of the things that she just talked about are the strategies that you can use. But if you are someone that is easily overwhelmed, it is very easy to get overwhelmed in cyber, and you need to find a way to survive, either through hobbies or planning or working with your supervisor, because it is an overwhelming amount. But that's also why it's fun. So, great question. I think we have time for one more, if we can.
I would also say, while somebody, to finish up, there's nothing wrong with asking the question, what am I responsible for? What's my checklist? What are my controls? And then going from there, if that makes sense. There's nothing wrong with getting the clarity from that standpoint either.
Stop giving them ideas. I'm going to have to go back to the office and explain why you got to do this. I'm going to have a munchkin day just to get this out of their heads now. Thanks.
But think about it. If they all know exactly what what it is, then now they're all moving to one beat.
I'd like to go back to your talk about your tabletop exercises. How do you work within a organization that is failing to do something, even in a test, is perceived as completely unacceptable? While our tabletops are to be learning experiences, how do you balance your plans never necessarily match the scenario? I'm finding that I'm being driven to provide scenarios where we guarantee success of the exercise versus adapting our plans to address real-world scenarios.
I'm going to give you a weird answer. I don't want a successful tabletop exercise. I want to go in and learn things that I didn't know about how our company would operate or how legal would handle issue X, Y, or Z. That's kind of the whole point. If you do an incident response tabletop exercise 4 times in a row and don't have after actions and lessons learned, you're either experts or have your blinders on. So that would be my challenge to you is failures are the goal, not the bad outcome.
I agree. I don't know what's driving you to, change the scenario so that it feels like you pass it. If it's a person, you should probably go sit down and talk to them and explain, hey, the goal of this is to find our issues, is to find our gaps, is to find our problems so that we can change our plan to address that. And then maybe next time you do a tabletop exercise, while you'll probably still fail because I don't know anybody that's ever passed one of them, you'll at least probably do a little better. So I think it's just challenging them and explaining that it's okay to fail these. We don't want, we want to do really good, but this is really to challenge our security and to challenge what we are doing.
So I would just say it's the mindset shift because just like you, many times I had to have conversations with people inside of organizations at every layer and say, hey, it's good that we found this and it didn't happen like this or someone else didn't find this vulnerability. And so I never looked at it as a bad thing whenever we found something because that's how I got the name, being able to come in and help them and protect organizations and put things in place before we even knew we needed them because of those types of things. So, and the other thing I did is anytime there was something that we did or there was a situation, I treated it like, so again, building that muscle. So solve it, look back on it, and then figure out how you incorporate it, right? So, oh wait, guys, remember when this happened? Okay, remember we found that? Okay, well, we put that into the plan. So you see, so that way, so it's a mindset shift. But, I don't think you're on the wrong track. I think you're on the right track, and I think that's the whole purpose. That's the whole intent behind it.
And we are actually at time. Our moderator sat down. He didn't close. My mic just went out. Thank you guys so much. We appreciate it. We could sit here all night long, but I know